Okay, good morning. Today we are starting the seventh lecture of automobile engineering. In last section, we described various components of the fuel delivering system. Now we are discussing the various fuel delivery system, fuel supply systems are discussing. Okay, so for the supply of the fuel from the fuel tank to the engine, the following fuel feed systems are used. They are first one gravity system, air pressure system, vacuum system, pump feed system. Once again, gravity system, air pressure system, vacuum system, pump feed system. These are the fuel feed systems which are used in the used to supply the fuel from the fuel tank to the engine cylinder. Okay, so let's look each of them in detail. Also, one more system is that is fuel injection system. Okay, so let's have a look. First of all, the gravity fuel feed system. What do you mean by a gravity fuel feed system? So here it indicates the schematic representation of the gravity fuel feed system. In the system, the fuel feed is mounted at the highest point of the SI engine. As you can see here, the fuel tank is placed at the highest point of the engine, and below that there is a carburetor. Okay, the fuel tank is connected to the carburetor. This is the fuel lines. The fuel from the fuel tank is transporting through these fuel lines and get into this carburetor. Also, the air from the atmosphere get into the carburetor by passing through the air filters. In air filter, air is got purified and it is get into the carburetor. And in the carburetor, this air and the fuel is got mixed, and this air fuel mixture is directly sent to the engine cylinder, and the engine cycles are complete. This is what happened. So in gravity fuel feed system, you need to understand this much, that is, the fuel tank is mounted at the highest point of the SI engine. The system is very simple and it is cheap because here the fuel drops into the float chamber of the carburetor under the gravity. That is, the fuel is transferred from this fuel tank to the carburetor just by means of the gravity, under the effect of the gravity. That's why it's called as a simple system and it's very cheap. There is no additional requirements is required. The position of the tank is important. That's why it's kept at a little high position. That is called carburetors. It's kept above the carburetor. Okay, the highest position is mandate. It is used in a small engine having low fuel consumption. A sufficient head is not developed for large engines. In the case of large engines, you will not get any sufficient head is not able to develop. That's why we are using it in a small engines having low fuel consumption. So its application is restricted only for small engines having low fuel consumption. You can note down these diagrams. And next one is the advantages of the gravity fuel systems. What are the advantages? The system is quite simple and cheap as of other fuel feed systems. The main advantage is it is very simple and cheap, and its disadvantage, the rigidity of placing the fuel tank necessarily over carburetor is its disadvantage. So here you can see that this is the carburetor and this one is a tank. The red color one, this is a tank. Okay, so the tank is connected to this carburetor and it is placed just above the highest position. And the fuel from the fuel tank is getting to the cylinder, means this carburetor by means of the or under the effect of the gravity. You can see. Next, we are discussing air pressure feed system. Okay, so as the name suggests, here we are using airtight tank is used in the system. An airtight fuel tank is used, and it is placed under the seat or near the engine. Here, the highest position is not required. The position is not a material. Okay, we can place it near the engine or under the seat according to our convenience. Here, an airtight fuel tank is used. It should be noted. An airtight fuel tank is employed. The hand-operated pump or mechanically operated pump supplies the high-pressure air to the fuel tank for supply the fuel to the carburetor. So by means of a pump which is mechanically operated or is a hand operated pump, we are supplying a high pressure air. A pressurized air is supplied to the fuel tank by means of a pump, and this pressurized air will deliver fuel to the carburetor. Now let's discuss what are the advantages of using these air pressure feed systems. The fuel tank can be placed at any suitable location. In last case, that is in the gravity fuel feed systems, it should be kept at a highest position and it is suitable only for the small engines. The large engines, the high probability it is not suitable. Okay. And the disadvantages of the air feed system. There are chances of pressure leak within the chamber. So this is one of the major disadvantages of the air feed system. That is pressure leakage taking place within the chamber. And next we are discussing vacuum system. So here as the name suggests we are using the vacuum. This system uses engine suction pressure. As we know that the piston is moving from the top dead center to the bottom dead center, a vacuum is created inside the cylinder. So this vacuum or the negative pressure or the suction pressure is used inside the used for in the system to suck the fuel from main tank to an auxiliary tank. So here we are using two tanks. There is a main tank which store the fuel and there is an auxiliary tank nearby to the main tank. And what will happen? By means of this suction pressure or this vacuum pressure, the fuel is delivered from the main tank to the auxiliary tank. And from this auxiliary tank, the fuel flow to the carburetor by means of gravity. Okay. This system is now obsolete. It's now not used nowadays. Okay. It's not in use. And next is pump feed system. Here also it's clear. I think it is clear from the name itself because pump feed means here we are using a pump to feed the fuel. This is a schematic representation of a pump feed system. Here you can see the fuel tank is there and there is a pump which is connected to the fuel tank. So what is the purpose of this pump? Pump is used to deliver the fuel in the fuel tank to the carburetor. The fuel from the fuel tank is delivered to the carburetor by using a fuel pump. So fuel pump the fuel from the fuel tank to the carburetor. The remaining outside, that is air is getting to this carburetor after purifying through the air filter, and the air fuel mixture is prepared in the carburetor, and this air fuel mixture, that is the charge, is taken into the engine cylinder. Let's have a look. In the system, a steel pipe carries the petrol to the fuel pump, which pump it into the float chamber of the carburetor to the pipe. These are the steel pipelines shown here. Here we are using a mechanical or electrical or a diaphragm pump. Or a mechanical, electrical or a diaphragm pump is employed, which supplies the fuel from the fuel tank and it is placed at a suitable location and it is vented to the atmosphere. So here we can keep the fuel tank at any suitable location according to our favor. Okay, according to our intention. This system is used in most vehicles in the present days. This is a commonly used fuel feeding system nowadays. So please note it down. You can note down this diagrammatic representation. And now we are discussing what you mean by this fuel injection systems. So the fuel injection system is mainly used for mixing the fuel with air in an internal combustion engine. As we know that a charge or the air fuel mixture is required for the combustion. Okay, the fuel is burned and the chemical energy is generated, and this chemical energy is used to drive the vehicle, or the power output is produced, work output is created. So the chemical energy of this fuel present within the fuel is converted to the thermal energy and then the work output. So to burn the fuel we are using the air is used. So the proper air fuel mixture is required for different operating conditions of this vehicle. So the basic purpose of the fuel injection system is to mix the fuel with air in an internal combustion engine. The functional objectives for the fuel injection system vary, but all of them share the central task of supplying fuel to the combustion process. So these are the various objectives, various factors just to be considered as power output, fuel efficiency, emission performance, reliability, smooth operation, initial cost, maintenance, etc. While we are selecting the fuel injection systems. Mainly in SI engines we are using the carburetor system. So then because there's a mixture of air and fuel, a charge is required. But in the case of CI engines, combustion ignition engines, we are not using the carburetor system because where only the air is taken into the system during the suction stroke and fuel is directly injected into this highly compressed air at the end of this compression by means of a fuel injector. Okay. And in the case of the petrol engines, nowadays we are using petrol injection system. And mainly we have been previously we are using the carburetor systems. Nowadays this carburetor is replaced by the petrol injection system. So injector means it's a nozzle that atomizes the fuel and forces it into the air streams. Okay, so each droplets of the fuel should be atomized and it should be mixed with the air stream. Then only there will be a proper combustion will take to be mixed with the air stream. Okay, so proper atomization of the fuel is required. So the injector nozzles are nowadays used. That is fuel injector systems are used and replaces the carburetor. So we will discuss these things in the upcoming lectures. Before that, we need to discuss what you mean by a carburetor. Okay. So in the next lecture, we will discuss what is carburetor and what will be carburetors and how a simple carburetor is working. New generation engines uses separate injectors for each cylinder. But in the case of multi-cylinder engines, there are separate injectors will be for each cylinder. The air fuel mixture for different load and different speed condition is controlled either mechanically or electronically. That means nowadays we are using almost all vehicles are employed with an engine control, electronic control modules, ECM. Electronic control modules are there. Electronic control modules. What's the purpose of the electronic control modules? Electronic control modules sense the amount of the air fuel ratio required at a different operating condition because at some during the starting of the engine we require more rich fuel is required, so that's more amount of fuel is required to start the engine, and in a normal operating idling condition also the amount of fuel required is very less because as this engine is not working, and in during acceleration we require more fuel is required. Okay, so cruising conditions will be different, so in each condition the requirement is different. So based on that requirement, the electronic control modules or engine control units sense the requirement, and accordingly we are delivering the fuel mixtures. And this will make the fuel systems more accurate comparatively to the carburetor systems. And we are using electronic fuel injection system, multi-port fuel injection system, gasoline direct injection system, etc. And this will discuss in the upcoming lectures. And that's for today. Thank you for watching.